Okay. Imagine this. You're eating your favorite meal, which may contain vegetables, meats, or maybe both. Do you ever think of what's in it? The process it was raised? We do not stop and think in what's in our foods just because it tastes good. But do we stop and think if the food is genetically modified? I myself used to be this way. Buy food fresh or processed. However, now I did my research and I've learned new information that I may be eating foods on my plate that are genetically modified. And I've learned that it's estimated that 75% of our foods on our grocery store shelves are genetically modified, such as soups, sodas, and crackers, and condiments have ingredients that are genetically modified in them. Today, let's discuss information about genetically modified foods, because many have a growing concern of what they are consuming. And genetically modified foods is something we should all be more acquainted with in regards to what it is, its history, and its advantages and disadvantages for us. First, let's discuss what is genetically modified organisms. And let's become more familiar with this term. Most of you have started to see on food packages words like no GMOs and GMO. But the Institute of Responsible Technology has defined GMO as a result of laboratory processes where genes from the DNA of one species are extracted and artificially forced into genes of an unrelated plant or animal. The foreign genes may come from bacteria, viruses, or even other animals, insects, and even humans. This means that genetic makeup the genetic makeup of a plant or an animal has been artificially modified for the purpose of having a certain characteristic to be enhanced or minimized for such plants or animals. Now that we have become more familiar with the GMOs, let's focus a little bit more on its history. Did you know that genetic engineering has been used since 12,000 years ago? Our past farmers used to modify by crossbreeding plants and to create crops so they could be better, but in a more natural way. For the purpose of crop lifespan, battle diseases, battle pests, and to have crops that grow faster, healthier, and juicier for consumers. In 1954, American biologist James Watson and English physicist Francis Crick discovered DNA-shaped double helix, which led the way to genetic engineering. And in 1974, we have biochemist Herbert Boyer and Stanley Cohen come up with a method that would allow them to cut pieces of DNA to later reattach it to other organisms. And this led to 1988 when scientists inserted genes to soybeans, making it most common GMO plant. These soybeans were made to resist pests, making it easier for farmers to tolerate weeds. The GMOs are now produced also with potatoes, rice, cotton, and sugarcane and sugar beets. Today, the advancement of technology making the process of genetic engineering more effective. Now we have 92% of corn is genetically modified, 94% of cotton is genetically modified, and also 94% of our soybeans are also being genetically modified. So as mentioned before, 75% of our foods on the market shelves contain genetically modified foods. So now we have know a little bit about the history of genetics. And it's surprising that genetic engineering has become a practice since prehistoric times. Today, by the use of technology to make more effective genetic engineering. Let's move forward to the advantages and disadvantages of genetic engineering. So now we know that plants become resistant to weeds, pests, and diseases, and on the other hand, lessens the need of herbicides and pesticides on the vegetables itself, therefore resulting in a bigger harvest and lesser chemicals used in farming. Therefore, resulting in therefore vegetables have a longer shelf life and better texture and juicier for the customer. Additionally, GMO plants can be modified to have characteristics to tolerate soils which expose to certain environments. For instance, if it's a sandy area, they can modify the plants to be able to tolerate dry conditions. And now that we know the advantages, let's discuss a little bit about the disadvantages. Well, let's discuss the advantages of the meat products. It helps to meet the demand for a large consumer market and meet and better quality and lower price for the consumers. Now let's talk about the disadvantages of genetic engineering. It causes diseases such as the Academy of Environmental Medicine states that women that were pregnant at the time that consumed genetically modified corn had their blood tested, and it contained some of the very toxic pesticides still in their bloodstream and also on their unborn child, and they're still unknown of what could happen and what could this lead for the future. And the Brown University research states that the GMO can also cause allergies, and additionally it can also damage ecological system because biodiversity would be dying. As you can normally see now you really need to pay attention to what you are purchasing at the stores. And today we have learned of a new process that is being used on our plants and animals, which is genetically modified organisms. It is good to be informed that most of our foods in our grocery store shelves are genetically engineered, and now we are well informed of what they actually are, when they emerge, and the advantages and disadvantages. And I want to leave you with this: tell me what you are and I will tell you who you are, by Ethelene Brent Severin. Well, thank you so much for listening to my speech.